When we think about royal breakups, most people picture the intense, super public divorce of Prince Charles and Princess Diana. But there's another story that's just as juicy. Princess Anne's split from Captain Mark Phillips. Behind closed doors, their marriage was packed with its own share of drama and secrets. Royal relationships often come with their own set of rules and expectations, and Anne's was no exception. Now at 74, Princess Anne is finally spilling the tea and confirming what we all kind of knew. So what's the scoop? Let's take a closer look at the real story behind Princess Anne's divorce from Mark Phillips. Before we dive into that chapter of her life, let's take a stroll down memory lane and check out her early years and past romances. Princess Anne's early years. Princess Anne, born on August 15, 1950 at 11:50 a.m. BST, came into the world at Clarence House, which was the official home of her family during her granddad King George VI's reign. Princess Anne was the second child and the only daughter of Princess Elizabeth, who would later become Queen Elizabeth II, and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Her arrival was celebrated with a 21-gun salute in Hyde Park, a traditional royal way to mark such an occasion. Anne was baptized in the music room of Buckingham Palace on October 21, 1950, by the Archbishop of York, Cyril Garbett. At the time, she was third in line for the British throne, right after her mum and her big brother Charles, who would eventually become King Charles III. When her grandfather, King George VI, passed away in 1952 and her mum took the crown, Anne moved up to become second in line. These days, she's 17th in line for the throne. To help raise Anne and her brothers, Charles, Andrew, and Edward, a governess named Catherine Peebles was brought on board. Peebles was in charge of Anne's early education while the family lived at Buckingham Palace. Since she was quite young, Anne didn't attend her mum's coronation in June 1953. However, in May 1959, a special Girl Guides company was set up just for her, called the First Buckingham Palace Company, which included the Holy Trinity Brompton Brownie Pack. Anne kicked off her formal education at Benenden School in 1963 and stayed there until 1968. While at Benenden, she bagged 6 GCE levels and 2 A levels. After finishing school, she jumped into her official royal duties at the age of 18 in 1969. Anne's early years were all about her royal upbringing, education, and stepping into the spotlight. But what kept her in the royal family, and why did she end up divorcing her husband? Keep watching to find out. Anne is a sport enthusiast. In the spring of 1971, Princess Anne scored a big win by finishing 4th at the Rushall Horse Trials. At just 21 years old, she clinched the individual title at the European Eventing Championship with her horse, Double A. This impressive achievement earned her the title of BBC Sports Personality of the Year for 1971. But Anne's talents didn't stop there. She also took part in horse racing. She competed in some top races like the Grand Military Steeplechase at Sandown Park Racecourse and the Diamond Stakes at Royal Ascot, showing off her versatility as an equestrian competitor. Throughout the 1970s, Princess Anne was a standout member of the British eventing team. She played a key role in their success at the 1975 European Eventing Championship, where they bagged silver medals in both individual and team events. Her accomplishments reached an international audience when she competed in the 1976 Olympic Games in Montreal, riding the Queen's horse, Goodwill, in the eventing competition. Though she suffered a concussion halfway through the course, she didn't let that stop her. She got back on and finished the event. Anne also shone at the badminton horse trials, where she finished 4th in 1974 and 6th in 1979. Over the years, Princess Anne took part in the prestigious badminton horse trials 5 times between 1971 and 1979. In 1985, she joined a charity horse race during the Epsom Derby and once again finished in 4th place. But her achievements in competition were just the tip of the iceberg. She's been super active in the equestrian community in many different ways. From 1986 to 1994, she served as the president of the Fédération Équestre Internationale, which gave her a chance to make a real impact on the sport worldwide. Then, on February 5, 1987, she made history by becoming the first royal to compete on a TV quiz show. She appeared on the BBC panel game A Question of Sport, where she showed off her knowledge and competitive edge. Since 1971, Princess Anne has also been a patron of the Riding for the Disabled Association, and she became the president of the organization in 1985, a role she still holds today. This position highlights her commitment to improving opportunities for people with disabilities through horseback riding. In June 2024, Princess Anne faced a bit of a health scare when she was admitted to Southmead Hospital due to minor injuries and a concussion, likely caused by an accident involving a horse. Even with this hiccup, her ongoing contributions to equestrian sports and her dedication to charitable causes remain a huge part of her legacy. Princess Anne juggles a huge variety of responsibilities and engagements on behalf of the Queen. Kevin S. McLeod, who was the Canadian Secretary to the Queen in 2014, summed up her attitude towards her royal duties perfectly. Her credo is, "Keep me busy. I'm here to work. I'm here to do good things. I'm here to meet as many people as possible." This mindset shows just how dedicated she is to her role and her determination to make a positive difference through her work. In December 2017, it was reported that Princess Anne had completed the highest number of official engagements that year compared to everyone else in the royal family, including her mum, Queen Elizabeth II. That really highlights how active she is in representing the royal family. Throughout her career, she's traveled all over the globe for official visits. Anne's first public engagement happened in 1969 when she attended the opening of an educational and training center in Shropshire. After finishing secondary school, she started taking on overseas duties, with her first international trip being a state visit to Austria with her parents that same year. She also joined them on their first tour of Australia in 1970. Since then, she's made countless trips to Australia, fulfilling her official duties, like serving as the Colonel-in-Chief of an Australian regiment and attending important memorials, such as the National Memorial Service for the victims of the Black Saturday bushfires in Melbourne on February 22, 2009. In 1990, Princess Anne made history as the first royal family member to visit the Soviet Union. She went as a guest of President Mikhail Gorbachev and his government, marking a significant milestone in her diplomatic engagements. In August 2016, Princess Anne made a return trip to Russia to visit Arkhangelsk, celebrating the 75th anniversary of Operation Dervish, one of the early Arctic convoys during World War II. However, later that September, she had to cancel some of her official engagements because of a chest infection. In October 2016, she embarked on a 2-day study tour of the Malaysian state of Sarawak. Fast forward to April 2022, and she and her husband went on a tour of Australia and Papua New Guinea to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, celebrating 70 incredible years on the throne. One of the standout moments of Princess Anne's career happened on September 12, 2022, when she became the first woman ever to take part in a Vigil of the Princes. This traditional ceremony at St. Giles's Cathedral in Edinburgh saw her standing guard over her mother's coffin as part of the ceremonial tribute. She later repeated this poignant role at Westminster Hall on September 16, 2022. Following the Queen's passing, it was revealed that Anne was also the one who signed the death certificate at Balmoral, alongside the attending doctor. Princess Anne's extensive and varied work, both in the UK and abroad, really highlights her commitment to her royal duties and her important role in the royal family's public life. So, how does the public view Princess Anne? Let's take a look. Princess Anne's image, public respect, and style. Princess Anne is often seen as the royal family's trustiest anchor and a beacon of good old-fashioned public service, having completed over 20,000 official engagements since she turned 18. Princess Anne's dedication to her duties and her approach to public service have secured her a special spot in the royal family and won her a lot of admiration from the public. In her early years as a royal, she was sometimes seen as a bit of a royal renegade because she decided not to give titles to her children, even though she was the spare to the heir in the line of succession. This choice showed she was ready to break away from tradition and embrace a more modern approach to royal life. The media back then often painted her as aloof and haughty, even dubbing her royal rudeness because of her blunt demeanor and straightforward style. For instance, in 1982, she made headlines when she told photographers to naff off during the badminton horse trials, which stirred up quite a bit of controversy. Vanity Fair described her as having inherited her father's sharp tongue and quick wit, which sometimes came off as brusque but was just part of her honest, no-nonsense personality. Despite facing these early challenges, Anne's commitment to her public roles has been nothing short of impressive. She's frequently hailed as the hardest-working royal, having completed a staggering 11,088 official engagements between 2002 and 2022, more than any other member of the royal family. Her approach to her work is driven by a strong sense of duty rather than a desire for public approval. Looking back on her early public service experiences, she noted that it took her about 10 years to feel confident enough to contribute meaningfully to public debates, especially for organizations like Save the Children. She highlighted that her work is all about making a real impact rather than just ticking boxes. Princess Anne is still one of Britain's most cherished royals. Telegraph editor Camilla Tominey has referred to her as a national treasure and one of the great English eccentrics, applauding her strong work ethic and unwavering dedication. Tominey pointed out that Anne's public role combines a strict adherence to protocol with a sprinkle of rule-breaking, making her a unique and well-loved figure. For example, Anne is known for her no-nonsense approach to her duties, which includes driving herself to engagements and handling her own hair and makeup. She's even been fined twice for speeding because she was running late to appointments. Additionally, Anne tends to skip shaking hands with the public during her walkabouts, explaining that it's just not practical to shake hands with everyone. Her down-to-earth nature shines through in simple moments, like mending fences at Gatcombe, or queuing up for the Portaloos at her daughter's horse competitions. She also champions causes that are a bit off the beaten path, such as the Wet Wheels Foundation, which aims to make sailing accessible for everyone, and the National Lighthouse Museum. When she turned 60 and 70, there was some chatter about whether she might retire, but she firmly shot down those suggestions. She pointed to the example set by her parents and her own commitment to her royal duties as reasons to keep going. Princess Anne's public persona beautifully blends a straightforward, down-to-earth attitude with a remarkable level of grace and courtesy. In terms of fashion, British Vogue editor Edward Enninful has hailed Princess Anne as a true style icon, noting that she was ahead of her time when it came to sustainable fashion. Princess Anne's style is celebrated for its timeless quality, often showcasing British brands and classic designs. She's well known for her love of tweed and tailored suits, and she's famous for recycling outfits, like a floral print dress she wore to both the wedding of the Prince of Wales in 1981 and Lady Rose Windsor's wedding in 2008. Not only that, but she's also the patron of the UK Fashion and Textile Association and has a reputation for rocking bold patterns and vibrant colors. Her fashion choices often reflect her passion for equestrian activities and the demands of her busy schedule. In the 70s and 80s, you could catch her in trends like puff sleeves, cardigans, and bright floral patterns. Anne is one of the few women in the royal family to don a military uniform, and according to The Guardian, she's rarely seen at royal events without a brooch. Her hats have ranged from jockey caps to colorful patterned styles, showcasing her unique flair. In addition to her fashion influence, Anne has graced the covers of British Vogue 3 times, starting with the September 1971 issue when she was just 21. She appeared again in the May and November 1973 issues in celebration of her engagement to Mark Phillips. Plus, she made the cover of Vanity Fair's May 2020 issue. In 2024, Tatler recognized her as one of the most glamorous European royals, highlighting her lasting impact on royal duties and fashion. Before Mark Phillips, Princess Anne had a few other romantic involvements. Let's go over those first. Princess Anne's romantic engagements and entanglements. When Princess Anne was just 20, she fell head over heels for Richard Meade, a talented Olympic equestrian rider who was 12 years her senior. Despite the chemistry between them, Anne's dad, Prince Philip, wasn't thrilled about their relationship, mainly because of the age gap. He made his disapproval known, which created quite a tough situation for the young couple. According to Ryan Huey, who was both a biographer and a friend of Meade's, this family pressure eventually led to Anne and Richard calling it quits after less than 2 years together. Throughout her early years, Princess Anne had a few romantic interests, but her love life was often shaped by the expectations and pressures of her royal family. However, she eventually found someone she truly connected with when she met Captain Mark Phillips, who shared her love for horse riding. Their paths crossed in 1968 at a horse riding event in Mexico City, and it was clear that their mutual passion for equestrian sports played a huge role in bringing them together. Mark Phillips was born in 1948 and followed in the footsteps of many in his family by joining the military. He trained at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, preparing to become a military officer. After completing his education, he served as a second lieutenant and eventually worked his way up to the rank of captain by the time he and Anne started their relationship. But it wasn't just his military career that defined him. Mark was also a dedicated horse rider who enjoyed notable success in equestrian sports, including winning a gold medal as part of the British equestrian team at the 1972 Olympic Games. Mark's impressive achievements and background made him a perfect match for Anne, who was equally passionate about the equestrian world. Although Anne and Mark first met in 1968, their relationship didn't instantly turn romantic. After their initial encounter, Anne dated another guy, Andrew Parker Bowles. You might know Andrew as Camilla Parker Bowles' ex-husband, who later became the Queen Consort. Anne and Andrew started dating in 1970, a few years after their paths first crossed. Their families had a long-standing connection, as Andrew's dad was friends with the Queen Mother, making their relationship feel a bit like fate. However, Anne and Andrew's romance hit a major roadblock. As pointed out, Andrew was a Catholic, and at that time, marrying a Catholic was a big no-no for the royal family, which is the leader of the Church of England. This religious difference made it impossible for their relationship to move toward marriage. So, Anne and Andrew decided to call it quits, and he later married Camilla Parker Bowles in 1973. That same year, as Anne wrapped up her relationship with Andrew, she made a big announcement. She was engaged to Captain Mark Phillips. Despite her past with Andrew, Anne and Mark's romance flourished, and they were excited to make plans for their future together. Interestingly, even after their romantic involvement ended, Anne and Andrew managed to stay friends and remained part of each other's lives. Now let's take a peek into Princess Anne's engagement and marriage to Captain Mark Phillips. What was that all about? Princess Anne's engagement ring and wedding. Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips got engaged in May 1973, marking a big moment in their lives and for the royal family. Their relationship had its fair share of ups and downs over the years, but by this point they were more than ready to tie the knot. And speaking of tying the knot, the engagement ring Mark chose for Anne was quite the stunner. It featured a gorgeous square-cut sapphire flanked by 2 sparkling diamonds on either side. The ring was pretty sizable, making it a real showstopper on Anne's delicate finger. When their engagement was officially announced, the media went wild with interest about the couple's future. There were plenty of questions floating around about whether their love could withstand the pressures of public life and royal responsibilities. Anne, ever the confident one, had a straightforward response. "Can? It's got to, hasn't it?" This showed just how determined she was to make their marriage work, no matter the challenges that came with being in the spotlight. Their wedding took place on November 14, 1973, and it was a grand affair that caught the attention of people around the globe. Princess Anne was the first of her siblings to get married, which added to the buzz and excitement surrounding the event. The ceremony was held at Westminster Abbey, one of London's most iconic and historic churches. On the big day, the Abbey was packed with spectators, and the whole event was broadcast live on television, raking in an impressive audience of around 500 million viewers. The broadcast of Princess Anne's wedding was monumental, turning into an 8-hour-long special on the BBC. The significance of the occasion was so great that November 14th was declared a national holiday in the UK. The wedding dress and tiara. Princess Anne's wedding dress was a stunning example of royal elegance, featuring a high collar, bell-shaped sleeves, and a dramatic 7-foot-long train. This beautiful gown was paired with the Queen Mary fringe tiara, a cherished piece of royal jewelry that Queen Elizabeth had worn on her own wedding day to Prince Philip. By choosing to wear the tiara, Anne honored her mother and continued a family tradition. The wedding was not just a personal celebration for Anne and Mark, but also a moment of national pride and significance for the UK. Starting a family. As Anne and Mark embarked on the journey of starting a family, their lives began to shift in significant ways. New priorities emerged, schedules became more complicated, and life naturally grew a bit more hectic. They welcomed their first child, Peter, in 1977, and their second child, Zara, in 1981. While having children is typically a joyous occasion for Anne and Mark, it brought underlying issues in their marriage to the surface. According to reports from Express, the birth of Zara proved to be a turning point that exposed the cracks in their relationship. The couple began to drift apart, highlighting the challenges they faced as they navigated the demands of parenthood alongside their royal duties. The stresses of their growing family and the expectations of royal life began to take a toll on their marriage, marking the beginning of a difficult period for both Anne and Mark. By the early 80s, Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips were spending more and more time apart. Their relationship was sliding downhill, to the point where they started booking separate hotel rooms whenever they traveled outside the UK. This clear physical distance showed just how emotionally disconnected they had become. Unlike other royal couples like Prince Charles and Princess Diana, whose dramas played out in the spotlight, Anne and Mark's issues didn't attract as much media attention. This gave them a bit more freedom to be honest about what was really going on. Anne had sort of settled into a supporting role in both her public life and personal life. She was juggling her royal duties while backing Mark in his own career. But just because she accepted this didn't mean their marital problems were any less obvious. After 15 years of marriage, it became pretty clear to friends and family that both Anne and Mark were unhappy. By the time things were coming to a head, it was obvious to everyone that neither of them was really satisfied. Their relationship had turned into a sort of mutual indifference, like they were just going through the motions without any real care or connection. It was described as a loveless union, just floating along without any spark. So, what were the reasons that caused Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips to part ways? Stay tuned, and we'll dive into those details. The real reason behind Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips' divorce. One of the main reasons for Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips' split was Mark's affair with another woman while he was still married to Anne. He had a relationship with Heather Tonkin, an art teacher from New Zealand, which led to the birth of their daughter Felicity in 1985. Although this wasn't public knowledge at the time, a DNA test in 1991 confirmed that Mark was indeed Felicity's dad. Before that test came back, Mark had been secretly sending money to Heather and Felicity to support them. To keep everything under wraps, Mark got Heather a job as a consultant for equestrian matters, cleverly disguising the money he gave her as a professional fee. He was shelling out about $8,300 a year this way, according to Express. In 1991, Heather decided to go public with her story because Mark was dragging his feet on the payments. She wanted him to officially acknowledge Felicity as his daughter and have his name added to her birth certificate. Before she went public, Mark's agent, John Erskine, even tried to intimidate her into keeping quiet by threatening to make her life a nightmare. So in short, the affair with Heather Tonkin and the secret payments really drove a wedge between Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips. But that wasn't the only issue. There were even more affairs on Mark's part. While still married to Anne, he was known to have several flings, including one with Pamela Bordes, who was a call girl at the time. He also had brief relationships with a Canadian PR executive and a British television anchorwoman. All these factors contributed to the growing distance and indifference in their marriage. On the flip side, Princess Anne wasn't exactly sitting back either. She was rumored to have had her own affairs. One name that popped up was Anthony Andrews, an actor famous for his roles in British television dramas. There were also whispers about a romance with her bodyguard, Peter Cross. Things got pretty scandalous when Scotland Yard officials accused him of being a bit too cozy with Anne, which raised serious eyebrows for someone in his position. Cross even went to the tabloids, describing their relationship as a special friendship and saying they were extremely close friends, according to Express. But the biggest buzz was around Anne's rumored affair with Commander Timothy Lawrence. This whole situation turned into quite a scandal in modern royal history. It kicked off when 4 personal letters from Timothy to Anne were stolen from the palace and leaked to The Sun, one of the UK's biggest newspapers. While the paper didn't publish the actual letters to dodge legal issues, just the fact that they had them created a massive stir. The palace had to respond, stating, "We have nothing to say about the contents of personal letters sent to Her Royal Highness by a friend which were stolen and are currently being investigated by the police." This did nothing to calm the media storm, though. The letters weren't just from any old friend. They were from Commander Timothy Lawrence, the guy she was reportedly seeing while still married to Captain Mark Phillips. Lawrence had joined the royal entourage in 1986 and quickly became a well-known face at royal events, which only added fuel to the fire regarding Anne and Mark's crumbling marriage. It's a tangled web of relationships that kept everyone talking. He was spotted with Queen Elizabeth on a bunch of important occasions, including her meeting with Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. This was a big diplomatic moment aimed at warming up UK-Russia relations. During this period, Anne and Timothy's bond got stronger. In fact, Anne made him one of her personal advisors for her trust, which was a big deal and showed how much she cared for him. A close friend of Timothy's shared that the feelings were definitely mutual, saying, "Anne has treated him as her closest confidant for a long time." Sure, Tim and the princess were physically attracted to each other, but their friendship runs deeper than that. He shows her the kind of care her husband doesn't. As their connection blossomed, Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips started leading pretty separate lives. By the late 80s, their marriage was really feeling the strain, and they often traveled apart just to avoid each other. In 1989, they announced their separation, although they initially claimed they had no plans for an immediate divorce. But honestly, that separation just pushed them further apart. Eventually, it turned into a full-blown divorce. In 1992, after 18 years of marriage, Princess Anne officially filed for divorce from Captain Mark Phillips. This divorce was one of 3 royal splits that happened that year alone. It all wrapped up super quickly. The judge gave the green light in just 4 minutes, and that was that. Anne and Mark went their separate ways. Even though they said the separation was mutual, the divorce made it all official. So, what are your thoughts on Princess Anne's marriage to Mark and their eventual divorce? Drop your opinions in the comments below.